Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Arseholes podcast on a Thursday evening after a huge game against Nürnberg this evening. Look, I didn't get to watch it. And I imagine a lot of Arsenal fans out there didn't get to watch it. But anyway, to try and get into it a little bit and to talk about all the things that have been happening in the transfer window since we last spoke, I've got Mize and Aaron with me. Hello, boys.
Hello, mate.
Hello.
Aaron, for those who can't see Aaron, well, actually, even for those who can see Aaron, what no one will see is that Aaron got a personalized Arsaholics mic buffer thing. That's what you call them, right? But
Yes.
sadly, what's happened, Aaron?
So this is a kind gift from my brother, which was a very thoughtful gift. It's a lovely Arsaholics podcast custom mic cover thing. Very nice gift, except for the fact it doesn't actually fit on the microphone. So here it is. I might just hold it up like a bit of cheeky product placement for 5 seconds.
I think it might fit my mic, mate. If you want to,
Are you angling for a?
Yeah, why not?
a
Well,
freebie?
Unless you're going to change your mic.
Yeah.
The cheeky product placement, even though we have our logo in the top right of the screen. You're just
Yeah, exactly.
just save yourself a bit, lad.
Anyway, no, it was. I don't know if my brother's listening, but I'm very grateful for the gift. And maybe you might see it on a coming soon to a microphone near you somewhere. I'm not sure where yet, but we'll figure it out.
Just make sure if you order it, you get one that fits.
It's general life advice there, yeah.
General life advice, exactly. Very good, very good. Says the man who's going to have a baby soon. Anyway,
Yeah. Oh dear.
exactly. So listen, everyone, please like, subscribe, share this podcast. We really appreciate your support, and I always forget to ask, but please do if you get a second and if you like what you're hearing. So, guys, we played Nuremberg today, and even though actually on the title of this episode it says preseason kicks off with a draw, we actually did kick off against Watford a few days ago. It wasn't really an advertised friendly. There was no guests or no guests. No, there was no one in the audience for the game because I think it was behind closed doors at Colney. But that was a 1-1 draw. And so was today. It was a 1-1 draw, but today was an opportunity, I suppose, for people to watch it because it was streamed on the Arsenal website, but behind a paywall. I can watch it because I was at work. I think you're the same. Aaron doesn't really do much work, so Aaron did get to watch some of it.
I watched the second half.
You watched the second half? Okay. So, I mean. So we just skip analysing the first half and go to the second half. I guess, look, as always with preseason, it's all about fitness at this point, right? Isn't it? We've just got a mishmash of players who are going to come on at different points of the game and different combinations. And it's all just about fitness. I don't think anyone, including Arteta, cares so much about the execution of tactics, etc. He might in the next friendly because when you get, I think 2 of these out the way, maybe you start sort of progressing a bit further. But at the same time, today, the starting 11 that I saw was a pretty strong starting 11, wasn't it? It's a sort of starting 11 that you may expect us to line up with in a Premier League game at the start of the season. Notwithstanding some of the signings that potentially are going to come in. I mean, Aaron, like any thoughts on that lineup and any takeaways at all from from the game?
So honestly, I watched that game. And for the first 10 minutes, I was like, oh, it's quite nice. Football is back. Get to watch the Arsenal again. And I thought, oh, this is great. I can get some deep technical and tactical insight ahead of the podcast recording tonight. Nothing. I'll tell you what, I learned absolutely nothing from that game. It was very nice for the players. I'm glad they got a run out. And, you got to see bits of everything. You saw so the starting lineup, it was good. It's going to sound really average. I'd love to tell you about the first half, but like I said, I didn't see it. So I don't really know, to be honest. But it's nice that it's purely a fitness thing. And then after 45 minutes, we made it 6 subs, I think. Kai Havertz came on. Gabriel Jesus came on. We changed the goalkeeper. And then it was okay. We had a few chances. They had a few chances. They scored from a Karl Hein error, but
did they score? Did we score an own goal there? Because it was sort of reported as an own goal.
Yeah, so it was Karl Hein had it. He played it out to Jorginho, who was kind of deep midfield. It looked like basically I'm not sure. It was basically a 50-50 because he played it really short. It hit either Jorginho or the player, bounced a one touch and just rolled back into the goal. So
it's a proper pre-season goal, wasn't it?
Yeah.
First game of pre-season, yeah.
It's a proper pre-season Arsenal goal, isn't it? Because there was the Carl Jenkinson famous own goal in pre-season a couple of seasons ago. Do you remember that?
Yeah. That was when he just basically. Is that when he turned around and basically finished it into his own net?
No. I think this was a massive slice. So he like smashed it and it went up in the air, and then it went quite a distance. I want to say, and then it kind of went in the net, kind of lobbed the keeper. Yeah, it was epic. I don't know if anyone can get it on YouTube in the background. It was properly epic. But yeah, Miles, it was a proper pre-season own goal. But our two pre-season scorers, like I said, we had Marquinhos. I think he scored the other week, and today Saka scored a brilliant goal at the start of the game, isn't it? Miles, did you see the goal?
I saw the highlights, 4-minute highlights that were what's lower than HD, standard definition, with some Spanish commentary on it. Very random. Yeah, I saw the goal. It's a continuation of what Saka was doing last season, really. Looks really sharp, but I think you have to take into consideration who we were playing against. I have no idea who he was up against on that our right-hand side, their left-hand side. But it looked quite easy for him in terms of cutting inside. But yeah, it was a fantastic finish and quite nice to see, actually, because Saka seems to be getting a little bit more. I know this is not the game to judge him on or judge the team on, but he does seem to be getting generally more goals and assists, but just a little bit more clinical in front of goal, which I think was maybe a little bit of a criticism right at the start of his, when he first broke into the team. And now the output, he's delivering that output a lot more. So yeah, nice to see. And it was a good goal. It was a good goal, a good finish.
Were you surprised, mate, that he was even starting? Because you see, the big thing from last season, one of the biggest takeaways from last season was how many minutes Bukayo Saka played at his still very tender age, but it was testament to just how important he is to the team. And then obviously he played some games with England right after the season finished, so it wasn't like a straight kind of season cutoff. Really, he had the games for England where I think he started both those games, I want to say, and played a pretty big part in that second game where he scored a hat trick, didn't he? And it doesn't seem like that was that long ago, and now he's starting today. I mean, did it surprise you that we didn't give him an extended break?
What did he play today? He played 45 minutes, did he?
Yeah, I think
45 minutes came off.
I mean, yeah, no, I guess a little bit. He's obviously gone pretty strong today with the starting lineup, and then obviously rotated at halftime and in the second half. I just feel like with Saka, we saw it last season. He was basically fit. I think he was fit the entire season, and I guess in terms of all the tests that they must do and all the kind of analysis and the data that they look at, he must just be up there in terms of consistently being fit, consistently kind of at high levels of fitness, basically, whatever that means. But and maybe there's just they're looking at that rather than saying, well, what you just said, Raj. He's played a number of games. He played a shitload of games last season. He's just played through the summer. We need to give him a bit of a break. But I think this is preseason just started. There's 4 more games in preseason, and like you just said, we've got players to come back, players to come in, as in new players to come in. So I expect his minutes are going to not necessarily be limited, but I guess it's just about getting him, making sure he's sharp for the first game of the season, whilst also kind of I was going to say managing his minutes or managing his, just managing him in general. But I think, I don't know. I think maybe it's just one of those things, mate, where he's just off the charts in terms of that kind of fitness record, as it were, and all of the data that they must look at. It's just one of those things where if he does pick up, it could be in any game. It could be in pre-season. It could be first game of the season. It could be at any time, like what happened to Saliba against Lisbon last season. Pick up an injury at the wrong time, and it could, it's just unlucky to a certain extent. But I don't know. I don't feel he's necessarily being overplayed as such. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what we do for the rest of pre-season, because obviously he's going to be our first choice on that right-hand side. That's an obvious thing to say. And I think more than anything, we don't need to see what we're going to get from him on that side. It's probably going to be more a case of who's going to be our right back going into next season, and who's he going to be linking up with down that right-hand side. And also, and just making sure that he's like fit and he's just sharp and ready to go for the first game more than anything else.
Aaron, and how much do you think that they listen to players with respect to the mental side of it? So I presume, there's a part of this is about physical fitness, but there's also which can be very measurable. You can do all these tests, like Miser just said. He clearly probably tests all the time, is really, really fit and loads of fuel in the tank. But the mental side's harder, right? I imagined in my mind that they might want to give him an extended break just so he could mentally get away from football for, an extended period of weeks. But obviously that seems like something which you can't measure too well, and you really just have to ask the player. Do you think that there is even a question they would have asked Saka? And do you imagine that Saka's just the sort of guy who said, "Nah, man, I just want to play some football"?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. I think he seems like a player who just likes to play, seems to be generally more available than not. And I think in this environment, look, it's a nice pre-season sunny training camp in Germany. The vibes are good in the team. This isn't like you're throwing him into a cup final after he's had like 4 or 5 weeks off. The idea of this is to build fitness, right? And I don't think no player played more than 60 minutes today. A lot of them came off after 45. And like I think nowadays the sports science just says that actually, I mean, mentally it's different, but I think physically a lot of the players just need to do some level of activity pretty much all the time to maintain like their muscle physique or whatever. And actually, like, you need to keep players moving just all the time, because that's what like actually the on-off, the big on-offs are what like actually tends to cause injury. I'm not a sports scientist, but this is kind of what I've heard smarter people than me say. But yeah, I don't read into it too much in terms of fitness. This is what it's for, right? It was a very low intensity game. I don't think they discuss much in terms of tactics or, I doubt they even scouted the opposition before the game or anything. So they're probably like, go out, just play, have some fun, get some fitness in. Don't stretch yourself too much. They probably even knew, like, look, you're going to play 45 minutes, you're going to play 50, you're going to play 60, and then condition yourself to, be tired by the end of 45 because you're not going to play 90 minutes, and just go on from there. Yeah, I mean, look, even towards the end of the game, there was no intensity. There were a few more chances towards the end as the game opened up a tiny bit, but actually a lot of that was down to actually some of the younger players that came on looked like they were trying to prove a point. So what's his name? Like Balogun was obviously came on the pitch. Waters, what's his name? Is it Lewis Scully? Is that his name? Lewis Scully. Yeah, he looked pretty good. Nwaneri came on. So the game had a bit of a different edge to it towards the end, because at least with young players, like Bukayo Saka's got nothing to prove, right? He knows that unless he has an absolutely rubbish pre-season, he's going to be starting the first season of the first game of the season. But like these younger players looked like they had something to prove. And actually with Balogun missed, I think, 2 decent chances. I don't know if you saw those in the highlights, Miles, but he missed two pretty decent chances. And I think for someone like Balogun, like some of these fringe players, pre-season is a bit more important. And actually, we need to just see what they can deliver, because if someone like Balogun has a good pre-season, someone like Vieira has a good pre-season, these are the types of players that really need to have a good pre-season in terms of actually delivering a bit more impact. And that's kind of what I'm looking forward to see over this game, or this game we saw a bit, but over the next coming games too.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, is there anything that we could have learned from this game? So Kai Havertz is a topic that I perhaps want to get into in a little bit. So let's just park him for a second. But actually, if we take, say, not just this game, but what we've saw of any other sort of signs in pre-season, can we read into anything? Is anything going on that perhaps we can lead some conclusions into? Like, say, if I take an example, right? Have you guys been watching any of the kind of pre-season footage, all of the access all areas type stuff? Yeah.
Yeah.
What are the interesting things? Fabio Vieira, yeah. So I was really surprised with how little muscle he's managed to put on in the preseason. Firstly, yeah, that's a really random thing to start off with. I fair play, but I do think that often you see this when players come to the Premier League, like after their first season that summer, they tend to bulk up. Like some of these kind of slider sort of players. You see, I don't know if you see, but like Mudryk, for example, there's pictures of him now versus when he joined Chelsea. Like he's like put on muscle. Like there's clear muscle. So I'm very surprised at that. 1, 2. When one of these videos, one of these compilations that Arsenal released, that all the players are sort of playing this sort of training game, sort of heard like one of the coaches sort of repeatedly shouting to Fabio Vieira to get involved in the game. Kind of, I can't remember the words that he used, but it was more like give. Almost like do something, basically. He was basically saying, worse if I could do something. Now, today, Fabio Vieira wasn't starting, but he ended up like randomly starting because Odegaard got injured in the warm-up, which we hope is not going to be a long injury. Now, when I was looking on social media about what was going on in the first half, it seemed like Fabio Vieira was not playing well. It sounded like from the tweets I was reading was that it was almost a very similar performance to what he was doing last season. But actually, Aaron, you thought in the second half that he was okay. Is there anything that you saw from him in relation to anything that I've just said that you want to sort of build on?
Look, it's very hard to analyze any player's performance in that game. I thought, the bits that I saw from Vieira looked okay. I mean, no one in that game was exceptional, and no one in that game I didn't think was terrible. And even if they were, doesn't really matter. No, honestly, no. I think it's more like, I think he's one that I am really expecting to see kick on this season, because we didn't see enough from him last season. And actually, you look at his role in the team, he's probably in that area of the pitch where we have potentially quite a lot of options, because you've got him, you've got Havertz, you've got ESR, you've got Trossard, or like if you're talking like either on the left 8 position or even out wide on the left or even on the right, he's not first or second choice in any of those positions. I don't think so. The question is like, what is his role going to be? Because a player like him, for him to really kick on, he needs minutes. And I really do struggle to see how he's going to get the minutes that we kind of need for him to improve. So maybe it's one way he kind of has to just prove himself in the cup games, actually have a good preseason, hit the ground running. Whenever he does get those 10, 15 minutes in some of these games, he needs to come on and do well. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I do like him. I think he's got something there. I think he's got a good pass on him. I think he's got, he's really good on the ball, but it just seems to lack intensity and lack physicality. And let's see. I think, we need to see more.
Yeah, agreed. Miles, something else is probably around the pathways for young players. I think that's one thing that we like to see, and Aaron, and you sort of touched on some of it earlier. Ethan Nwaneri signed this new contract since we last did this podcast. And it is huge news, right? Because he's the youngest ever Premier League player at 15 years and however odd months last season against Brentford. I believe it was Brentford away that he came on for, like broke that record. So that's a statement in itself. From all that we read, Man City and Chelsea did everything they could to convince him and his camp that he should be joining one of those teams. And it seems like actually it got to the point where it was generally felt in the football world that he was going to join Chelsea or Man City. Such was the offensive that those clubs had put over him. And then seemingly towards the end, I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but he decided Arsenal was the right place for him. And as I don't know if it's official, has it officially been announced? I think perhaps it has been officially. It has been officially announced. Yeah. Which, you know, allegedly has made him the highest paid youth player in Arsenal's history, basically. So this is obviously a guy with, you know, bags of attention and potential. And I think he came on today, and there were some clips going on around on Twitter of a particular bit of skill that he did, which kind of looked amazing and like powerful and driving. Kind of seemed like something that I recall, you know, Oxlade-Chamberlain was doing sort of in his sort of peak at Arsenal. That kind of like just power running, but Miles Lewis-Skelly during this whole year, this whole kind of, you know, last season, has sort of gone under the radar a little bit. Like people haven't really been talking about him, but when you read some of these guys who really follow the Arsenal sort of youth setup, they seem to talk about Miles Lewis-Skelly at the same sort of level as Ethan Nwaneri. They talk about him as someone who is one of the big talents, young talents in the Premier League. And I sort of have wondered whether this is something that Arsenal have really enjoyed, in terms of they've sort of enjoyed one prospect taking the attention off one of these other ones. I feel that, you know, they probably felt that it could probably be quite good for Miles Lewis-Skelly if that limelight is taken away. And, you know, we've seen him, you know, with the first team squad here, and actually he played a brilliant pass at the end of the game to Balogun, which is one that Balogun missed. From what you know or heard, Miles, is there anything you want to add to that? Can you see, and would you enjoy seeing him and Ethan Nwaneri kind of integrate into the Arsenal team properly this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially as an Arsenal fan, like we love seeing players come through the ranks, come through the academy, and kind of make it with the first team, or go on to do what their potential might indicate they could do, you know. And there's been loads of examples of that from our academy in the past, like Fabregas, Wilshere, and obviously Saka, Smith Rowe. So it's nice to see, obviously, and it's really, really encouraging from an Arsenal like fan perspective that, you know, we seem to be producing quite a decent number in terms of quantity of these talented youngsters that are on the cusp or on the verge of the first, maybe not on the verge of the first team, but, you know, in and around the first team squad, with potentially, you know, they might get an opening, they might get a chance to break into the first team if there's injuries, if there's suspensions, that kind of thing. But I think you go back what, 3-4 years now, when, I mean, you take the Saka example, right? Saka was the one. Saka and Smith Rowe were the two, but, you know, I think Saka was the one that everyone was watching to see what he might do if he got the chance in the first team. And you go back to that time, and Arsenal were a completely different club, a completely different team, in a completely different kind of phase, I guess you could say, of like evolution, and just where we were as a club. It's changed so much basically in the last kind of 3.5 years since Arteta came in. So I feel like it's going to be really, really difficult now for some of these promising, talented young players, even if they are, you know, being signed to either long-term or quite big contracts. I feel like it's going to be really, really difficult for them to break in. I mean, you think about Nwaneri, where he plays, which I think is kind of like attacking midfield. And, you know, Aaron was just listing off some of the players that play in that position. And you add to that, you know, if you just look at the whole midfield, you're looking at players like Rice when he comes in, and Thomas Partey. He's not going to be starting ahead of those guys anytime soon. So it's going to be those odd cup games. And when we have big problems in the squad in those areas, and we might need to call upon some of these youngsters. But, you know, it's still really, really early for them. But yeah, I think it's going to, for any player to now really come through Hale End and make a real impact in the first team, I think they just have to be really, really special. Like Saka was special. Saka is special. And that's why he was able to. But I think timing wise, it was like perfect timing for him, and it just worked out really, really well. Whereas I think now that player is going to have to be extremely special, and it's much, much harder now to get that break, considering when you look at the squad and you look at the depth in the squad and you look at the level of players now, and you look at the age of the players that are now starting in our first team. They're all, not they're all, but a lot of them are 22, 23, 24, 25, in that kind of age range with lots and lots of experience, internationals. It's going to be really hard to displace some of those players. So, I mean, I think in, the two players you mentioned, I think with those guys, they're still so young. I think Waneri's 16 and Lewis Skelly's, I'm not sure actually how old he is, but
I think around the same, because they both signed the same scholar contract, whatever age group that is.
Yeah, so there's like plenty of opportunity for them to obviously have a couple of loans over the next few years. And, let's see how they do. And that tends to be the route that a lot of these players take. And I just think that the kind of what happened with Saka is like, I don't know, how often is that, how often does that happen? How often is that going to happen? You look at Nelson, for example. Reece Nelson's gone on plenty of loans, kind of come back. And I know he's just signed this new deal, but, he hasn't still really done it. He hasn't, there's still kind of question marks about what his best position is. There's still question marks of, is he really, a first team Arsenal player? A lot of people would say no. But he came with all the kind of potential and promise in the world. So yeah, still a long way to go. It'll be lovely to see them in and around the first team. But I think if you're 16 years old and you're looking at the players that are ahead of you, I don't think it's any shame if they're, I don't think it's a bad thing or a negative if these guys are, going on good loans this next couple of years and getting that experience, getting minutes, maturing, all of that, and then seeing what the situation's like when they come back, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So look, now Arsenal are going to move on to America now in the kind of next phase of pre-season. And I think we play 3 games out there, right? I think it's is it Chelsea, Man United? Oh no, it's the MLS All Stars, then Man United,
Barcelona,
and then Barcelona, right? I know Barcelona's the last one. I can't remember the order of the first 2, but so that's coming up. So that should be exciting. That should be good to watch. Now, one of the things that we wanted to cover in today's episode was about the signings that look like they are coming in. So obviously Havertz has already come in, and it looks like Timber and Rice are, I'm not trying to jinx it, but it looks like they're Arsenal players basically. Yeah, like it seems like everyone is reporting them as more than done. They're just, almost just waiting to be announced or whatever. So what we wanted to do is get into a little bit of what we think that might mean for the Arsenal squad and how the team sets up and what that could mean for some other players. But before I do that, this guy, David Ornstein, has this habit of tweeting about Arsenal whilst we're recording a pod, right? And so, and Aaron, the last time we did, it was the mega £105 million bid made by Arsenal. Now, there's something else Arsenal related has come, similar figures we're talking about right now. Aaron, what has just been reported by David Ornstein?
It's absolutely huge news in terms of the context of all of football, I think, not just transfers.
And hair.
Rob Holding. Seems like Besiktas have bid 2.5 million for Rob Holding. And it sounds like it's going to be rightfully rejected.
I mean, that 2.5 million, that must just be a down payment for negotiations or something, right? Like just the right to enter negotiations. This is way below my valuation, guys.
We did our transfer episode last week, 2 weeks ago. What did you say, Rog? How much did you say it was worth?
So despite you inflating what I actually said, I said I think we should be able to get 15 to 20 million for it.
20 million. Okay. So you think he is?
I had good logic.
You didn't say what currency there, but it can't be pounds.
20 million rupees.
Yeah.
But my logic, which I still stand by, is he a Premier League quality defender? Yes, I think he's a Premier League quality defender.
Oh, is he still a Premier League? I don't know.
What do you mean he's still like he was playing minutes?
He's not championship quality, is he? Yeah, I mean,
if he's
not championship, fine. He's not championship.
He's probably bottom end.
Yeah,
Premier League quality.
And those idiots pay so much money for players.
That's true. Yeah, if it's a Premier League team, But right now, he is Turkish Superliga level of interest.
Oh, mate, at 27 years old, right?
Is he only
you're not-
27?
Yeah, he's not. He's not. Bro, these are all the reasons I listed last week. He is not like a €2.5 million player or whatever. That's ridiculous. He's 27
I remember you said
years
this last
old.
time as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's 27.
I think he's only got a year left on his deal, right? Which
Yeah.
I like maybe factors in, but I agree. 2.5 is very, very low.
Like, who do Luton think they are for not bidding for this guy?
Yeah.
Like, who do they honestly like? He will help keep you up. I don't understand like why there is this. Like, he definitely is not Arsenal quality. He's definitely not top 6. But don't get me wrong. But why is no one bidding for this guy? I can understand why the Saudis aren't interested because I think that should be like a weird fit, you know. But surely there's like a lower half Premier League club that wants it. This is ridiculous. I'm glad to hear that it's been rejected.
But I think you said 15 to 20 million. That is high, mate. I can't see us getting anywhere near that. Like, I think if we get 10, which I think is what I was sort of going for the last time we spoke.
Oh.
So would you? Let's play a game. Would you sell him for 8? Myers, yes or no? 8?
Yeah.
Yes. Raj?
Yeah.
No,
8
look,
million?
I told you he's the Chris Wood of centre backs. That was
all
what
right.
I said
8,
last time.
8 million bid comes in tomorrow. Cash.
No.
All in. No. 10?
No. No. Do you know why? He is the sort of player that some club will come in for later. Like,
no,
when they
how
do all
much?
their
10
stuff,
million.
they realise they can't get their top 15
All right, fine.
choices.
10 million comes in on deadline day.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I want him to be sold this window. Don't get me wrong, yeah? So, absolutely. Sorry, I take 8 million for him on deadline day.
Okay.
Yeah. But if someone bid 8 million now, nah, man.
Okay.
Why?
Right, okay.
What? So you think someone else is going to come in with more? You think there's going to be competition for him?
So. I think so. You never know towards the end. As I said,
yeah,
they've gone through their first 15 choices. They couldn't get them, and now they've got Rob Holding. Yeah. Like, honestly, he's a reliable bet.
I mean,
it's quite what you're gonna get.
It's quite funny, isn't it? Because you think of Harry Maguire right now, not when 80 odd million, and you look at him now, and you think you'd probably compare the two players in some ways. And I know one of them plays for Man United regularly, one of them plays for England, captains England, but plays for England, and the other doesn't. But equally, like I'd really be struggling to pick who I'd rather start for us if we had both players, which tells you a lot about like how mental that 80 million was for Maguire.
Still starts for that by that logic, then Rob Holding should be getting games for England, then, right?
I think it's the other way around, that neither of them should be anywhere near.
But I think the undisputable point to Miser's point, right, is there's not like a 60-70 million delta between these players, right? It's like, it's insane. I don't know, man. Poor guy. Like, whatever. Anyway, look, it got been rejected. So yeah, let's see how that goes. Okay, look, let's talk about these players that we know are going to be Arsenal players. So Havertz is the one that everyone's talking about profusely at the moment in terms of where Arteta sees him. And what was really interesting is after this game, I don't know if you guys saw, but I think an interviewer asked Arteta about Havertz and where he sees Havertz playing. And Arteta gave the most like kind of diplomatic type, obviously nonsense answer of, oh, we're kind of basically where's the effective. We're going to have to see how it goes, in pre-season and see where, he fits and where everything, whatever, which is obviously BS. He's not signed him with no clue as to where he intends on playing him. Like, that's absolute nonsense. So he's not giving anything away. But Aaron, do you know where Havertz played today? Like, where was he roughly positioned, or any clues there?
He definitely played on the left side. He was like, he kind of floated between that left wing role. But honestly, it was so hard to tell because players, he came on the second half and we were changing around systems. Nketiah was on for a bit, then Balogun was on, then various other players came on the pitch, but he was in and around the left side of the pitch. Didn't do a lot, to be honest. Had a half chance where I think he should have done better, but it was really hard to tell. But it was definitely on the left side of the pitch. Now, whether that's completely out wide, or what his movement was between kind of that left wing, it was kind of too hard to tell. But yeah, he's not. I initially thought when we were first linked with him that he would play on the right, like in the Odegaard role as a kind of rotational option, but that definitely doesn't seem to be the case, at least based off on today. And actually, you mentioned Arteta. There was actually a quote that he said on Havertz today. It wasn't that interesting, but he did say, like, I'll read it out, is that he's not a replacement for Xhaka. He's not going to be a like for like because everybody's going to be very different to what Granit gave us. It'll be very different, but Kai has tremendous qualities for our way of playing. So I take it from that, which is more like he will be the attacking version of Granit Xhaka rather than the defensive version of Granit Xhaka, at least when it comes to getting into the box. Because there were times last season where, I can't know, was it Man United at home, where like Granit Xhaka, we were just like lobbing late crosses and then Granit Xhaka was making runs into the box.
Yeah.
And we've seen it so many times where Granit Xhaka gets the ball and then, to be fair, he did a pretty decent job at the attacking part, but it wasn't his natural game, right? His ability to take a player on wasn't there. His finishing was decent, but never amazing. Not that Havertz has actually shown any decent finishing abilities, but certainly that I look at that late run into the box, that kind of additional man in the box, and the ability. Whilst his finishing ability isn't amazing, he knows how to score goals. That is what I think Arteta would want from Havertz. And look, hopefully we get the Rice deal over the line. And I think the idea is that they complement each other quite well. I think Declan Rice seems like someone who you can, a bit like Partey did, but almost more like leave on your own a bit, and he will do a job just covering that midfield if you left him there. And that means Havertz can vacate the space, Odegaard can vacate the space, and Rice will kind of mop up and win the ball and keep the pressure on. And I think if you're keeping the pressure on, you want players who can add that firepower into the box. But to counter that, and I can see Russ has said this, like Havertz signing still has me scratching my head. I am still a bit doubtful, because whilst the theory and the tactical idea is pretty spot on, I think, and it could work, there still is a gamble on him actually doing it.
And this is an idea that, exactly. This is just an idea that we've put together as a fan base.
Yeah. And based on what I've seen from him at Chelsea, I am a bit skeptical. Like, it still is a huge gamble on if we can essentially make him consistently deliver what we need him to do, and do it with the level of discipline that is required for that role. And I haven't seen it. He just seems so inconsistent, Havertz. And he seems so hit and miss. And he sometimes, he doesn't typically strike me as the Arteta type of signing, which is why it's so intriguing, because I want to see, like, the idea that Arteta could fix him is really exciting. But if you purely take the last 2 years, I'm not convinced yet, obviously.
I think a part of that, though, like, I think we have to factor in a couple of things, right, from his time at Chelsea. So one, he was playing predominantly through the middle, like as their forward, because they didn't have anyone else. That's
but
definitely
Germany
not...
play him there as well, right?
And I don't know how well he does for Germany in that position, but for Chelsea, he was
not good.
Not good.
Yeah.
Constantly offside, finishing not great. But I think the other thing that kind of, I think, can be quite big for a lot of players is just inconsistency around, like, Chelsea the last 3 years. I think he's been there 3 seasons. They've obviously just gone through so much as like a club in terms of ownership. Managers have changed 3 times, I think, 2-3 times. And I think for some players, maybe just not being in kind of like a settled team or a settled dressing room with the same manager, like that could potentially just have a really big impact. And if you're not being played in the position that you want to be played in, or you feel like that you can excel in, it could just be a combination of factors. Means just that's the reason why he just didn't happen for him at Chelsea for the most part. But if you look back at why Chelsea signed him, I remember when they signed him, and I was super jealous because he was a huge signing for them in terms of money, and he was like one of the hottest properties in Europe. And there was obviously a reason for that. He was tearing up the Bundesliga for one of the more average, well, I say average teams, but basically not one of the top teams, Leverkusen, as in if you think about Dortmund and Bayern as being the sort of two top teams there. And he was scoring goals. I think he was playing sort of in various positions similarly to what he's done for Chelsea. But there was clearly a player there. So I don't know. I just feel like anyone who joins us now, like Aaron said, right? Arteta obviously knows what or both of you said, Arteta knows what he wants from any new players that he's targeting and he's identifying as, that's the guy I want. Same with Rice, same with Timber. I think we've just probably got to have I was going to say faith, and maybe it's a little bit. I don't think I was going to say blind faith. It's not blind faith. It's faith based on what Arteta's been able to do in terms of implementing a system and then finding the right players to fit that system over the last couple of seasons with the players that he's brought in. And generally the success rate of the players he's brought in has been really, really good. It's been very, very high. So I've got massive faith in bringing him in and him doing well. And I don't know. I also think he's going to be playing. He's basically a replacement for Xhaka. And I think it's quite interesting because when we were previously linked with Declan Rice and Havertz, kind of before Havertz, that conversation even started or that news even came out, I was thinking that we're signing Rice and he's potentially playing two positions. He can play as the DM because there wasn't really any talk about Partey leaving either. So it's kind of like Partey as the DM or Rice or both of them. But there might be some games where Rice plays in Xhaka's position. But now we've got both or going for both. I think 99% sure that he's going to be predominantly playing in that Xhaka role. But yeah, he's just going to do, I would like to think, an even better job going forward, like you said, Aaron, and on the attacking side, than what Xhaka was able to do with 7 goals, 7 assists last season. So I'm super excited for this for him. I'm really, really to see him and to see kind of there's a little bit of a question mark about exactly where he's going to play because we could be completely wrong. But I think overall, in terms of just the signing and the potential quality of the player, still really young, man. Like he's 23, I think. Is that right?
Yeah,
a couple of years older than Saka.
The one thing I say is if we get a season from Havertz or many seasons from Havertz that are equal, if not better than what we got from Xhaka this year, I think Arteta would have done a phenomenal job. Because Xhaka was really good, right? And I don't know how many goals and assists he got Xhaka last season, but
7 and 7, I think it was.
Yeah. So if we can get 10 goals from Havertz, I don't know how many goals he got for Chelsea last season, but 10, 12 goals from that position consistently, that would be really, really good. And that for Arteta to do that, to almost say, look, I'm going to pay 60 million for this guy, even though he hasn't consistently done it at Chelsea, and then turn him into 12, 13, 14, even 15 goals a season from a attacking midfield position, that would be incredible work. Incredible scouting, incredible foresight, and incredible, a risk, right? But I think people are just assuming that, maybe this is credit to how the scouting and integration of players has gone so far. People are assuming that it's going to be easy and that it's going to work straight away. But I don't know, if you go off the last 2 years and you're putting a lot of faith in this whole Chelsea era mess, Chelsea can't get the best out of anyone, which to be fair has a lot of merit. But, it's almost like saying, look, he's actually got to step up now going from Chelsea to Arsenal because actually how things have changed, the level has gone up, right? Previously, with guys like Willian, they were using Arsenal as their final big contract and a step down from Chelsea. But now Havertz has got one of Chelsea's probably biggest and probably most best players in the last 2-3 years has got to step up when it comes to playing for Arsenal and to get into this Arteta side, which is going to be interesting. Hopefully he can do it. Hopefully Arteta can turn his attitude around, his consistency, his mental ability to just really be in the intensity of his game. But yeah, I'm just saying, the data that I have is the last 2-3 years at Chelsea, right? And I see a good, promising player, but someone who in big games sometimes like doesn't turn up.
Apart from the Champions League final.
Apart from the Champions League final, yeah. The big,
which
yeah,
he's admitted in interviews, effectively, saved his kind of the reflection of his season. He even says that season itself he wasn't very good either. But look, I think we all accept and we all are very comfortable in saying that Arsenal would have done incredible amounts of due diligence on whether he was the right kind of player for them, and they fully back the manager and his ideas. So, and Russ's point here is completely right. For the money we paid, he isn't on the bench, is he? I mean, I totally agree with that. I mean, I suppose the counter to that is I can imagine us just rotating more generally anyway. So there probably aren't, there's probably going to be a bunch of players who aren't bench players, but they're not, they're just rotated. But I agree with Russ. Like I think there's definitely a specific role in mind that he has for Havertz here. The thing that I suppose as fans that, it keeps us guessing a little bit is that we're basing a lot of this on the assumption that we play in a very similar way to we did last season. And so when we are thinking about how this all shapes up, we think with that in mind. I think the other reason why people are sort of assuming that he takes this Xhaka role is because if he doesn't take this Xhaka role, and if he's actually intended somewhere else, I'm not sure how the rest of the pieces of the puzzle are supposed to fit together. And I guess that goes on to that, probably brings us on nicely Declan Rice. Declan Rice, we know is, probably going to be an Arsenal player very, very soon. And I can't imagine a scenario where the plan is for a Declan Rice Partey central midfield. Like, I can't imagine that to be the case. I can imagine that happening sometimes because of, certain game situations. But I imagine that when you sign a player like Declan Rice at the age of 24, which is young, but it's not like some kind of, random raw 19-year-old, and you're paying that much money for that guy, you're probably saying, you're probably not signing him to play in a completely different position than he's played up to this point. So it may be that he's asked to do other things, and it's probably definitely going to be the case that he's asked to do other things that he is from West Ham. But I can't imagine a situation where we've signed Declan Rice to play predominantly in the Xhaka role, which I don't think either of you were saying. But and I agree that I think he gives us some optionality. But at the same time, there is an argument to say that, like, Kai Havertz is a forward player who is more likely to play in those forward positions. Does that make you guys think that there are other ideas or Arteta has with other players coming into that kind of the Xhaka type role, whether it's Fabio Vieira, whether it's Emile Smith-Rowe, whether it's Ethan Nwaneri, or do you see us going back into the market? Aaron, thoughts?
I don't think we will. I don't think necessarily we're going to go into the market for a player that will change us. Or I don't think we're going to do anything different. I think if we go for one more attacking player, and I think there's only space for at best one more attacking player, it'll be for like more of what we have, right? Like more of the types of players we have. To be fair, we've got kind of all sorts of types of players now in those three attacking positions. But I do agree with you, Raj, is that I think we'll see this pre-season a new system emerge. Now, whether we'll play that system during the first Premier League game of the season is a different thing, but I do think we will experiment with something. I don't know what it is. I don't know if that means, I don't know, like no striker, like a false nine type system with Gabriel Jesus maybe out wide, because Saka, we say Saka's not going to play, and Saka's being rested. We play Gabriel Jesus out wide, and we play, I don't know, Martinelli as some kind of inverted forward with Havertz and Odegaard behind it. I don't know, like some weirdness and some madness that we are probably, like us mere tactical mortals will never understand. And I think Havertz probably does play into that thinking. That I don't think it's completely unlikely that we say, look, if we're going to play the old Arsenal way of last season, we could easily just do that by playing Partey and playing Declan Rice where Xhaka was, right? And you get something probably quite similar to what we had last season. Or you say, no, we're going to find a different way of playing. We play Declan Rice a bit deeper and we do something else with Havertz and how he fits in. I think that's possible. I wish I was smart enough to predict and come up with some elaborate plan of how it could work. Because actually, with the players we have so many different types of attacking players now. You can kind of do anything. The only real profile that we don't have now is like a Giroud type striker. But you could argue that maybe someone like Balogun could eventually come into that type of role, but he's not really that type of player yet. But we've got so many different types of players that we could come up with something different. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, yeah, I mean, mine's probably to you. Do you think that, building on that, I mean, do you think that from an Arsenal perspective, it could be that we don't go into next season with many traditional central midfielders? So if you look at the sort of traditional ones, I suppose, Declan Rice, Thomas Partey, El Neni, Jorginho, I guess that's 4, but they're all very similar types in terms of they're more deeper players. Do you think that it's just that we're going to explore other options, other types of players in these kind of, or is it a different formation, or what is it?
I mean, those 4. I mean, yeah, those 4. I'll take El Neni out of it, to be honest, because not in a disrespectful way, but I feel like, if he's going to be playing Premier League minutes, that means 3 other players, assuming we keep Thomas Partey, have probably got injured.
I mean, he should have the €2.5 million bid from Besiktas. But that is just swap the names and that fits.
Yeah, agreed. And I think we take that, wouldn't we? So I kind of feel like with those 3, if I'm basing this on, we are going to be playing one holding midfielder, right? And I think bringing in Declan Rice, he's just his kind of, I mean, the stats back this up as well, but defensively, like his ability to sense danger, to intercept, to break up play, just tackling in general, all of those attributes, all of his defensive attributes, he's fantastic in that role. So I kind of feel like we're spending the money and going massive on one of the best defensive midfielders, probably in the world, but let's just say in the Premier League. Because we're happy, we're content with him being that sole defensive midfielder, and everyone ahead of him, essentially, I don't want to say like they're just attacking players, but all of the players ahead of him pretty much have the license to do what they're good at, if you know what I mean. Whereas I think before, Thomas Partey has been fantastic in that role as well, but we couldn't rely on him for a whole season. Xhaka was in the team. Xhaka was having to drop in quite a bit. But I feel like with Declan Rice is just a massive upgrade in that position. So I kind of feel like with those 3, if we keep Partey, Rice as your starter, and Jorginho as a squad player, I'm quite happy with that as options. And I think ahead of that, we've got loads and loads of options. Currently we've got kind of 3 strikers at the moment. We've got options on both sides in terms of, like they're not going to name the players, but yeah, Saka, all of those guys, all of the wide players. And then we've got all of these kind of Erdegaardy type players that not really sure where the likes of Vieira and Smith Rowe necessarily fit in this team, but they're options, they're squad players that we can hopefully utilize this season. So I'm kind of like okay with who we have in the squad, assuming Rice does come in, and the options we've got. I think the concern is if we start to, if we look at losing, if we say, let's say Partey does leave this window, then there's a massive concern, because really I would want to have, if Rice gets injured, for example, you need to have a very good standard first player to come in if they're playing such a key role in the team as well. So ideally I'd want to be keeping Thomas Partey for another season, basically. Different system, it's hard to predict, man. Like, no one would have predicted what Arteta was going to do with Xhaka 12 months ago. No one predicted that. I don't think, anyway. I don't think any of us did. And so it's kind of hard to know, like what Aaron had said, there might just be some like craziness, or there might just be a completely different system that we're working on that we might start to see in pre-season. So it's very, very hard to predict. And like, we're not like tactical experts to know what is the best system for this Arsenal team. But I hope that he's working on kind of a plan B and a plan C, because I think we're going to need it, right? Like, I think that's one of the probably criticisms of not necessarily criticisms, but one of the improvements that we can definitely make. I feel like we've only ever had one way to play this last season or so. And Havertz is an interesting one, because one thing that he probably doesn't really get recognized for is he's a very physical player. Like, he's very tall. He's very good, like bringing the ball down. He's meant to be really good in the air, but I think when you watch clips of him at Chelsea, he's missed loads of headed chances, but he's meant to be really good in the air. So, like, is he going to be that kind of X factor player that, when it comes to the last 10 or 15 minutes and we need a goal, he's the one who goes up top and we start launching balls into box? I have no idea, just speculating. But yeah, like, I definitely hope that we're working on alternative plans, because I think, like, we're going to need it this season for sure. We're going to need it just going forward.
I can see so many goals next season with, like, Saka just crossing it in late to Havertz just running in and Havertz just heading it in. Like, I don't know, in my head, I just see that happening, because I remember it happening quite a few times with Xhaka. Like,
it was a move. It was a move. The back post,
those back post headers, and it's Xhaka. So we were like, "What the hell's going on? Like, well, what is this?" And look, I think you're right. Like, this system stuff, we, like you said, Myers, like, we didn't think about this stuff like a year ago, right? With Xhaka doing what he was doing. We had Tierney, who was, our best left back a year and a bit ago, and then Arteta's like, "Sod this, I'm going to put Zinchenko there," and all of a sudden everyone's talking about inverted fullbacks and look at what Timber's doing, Zinchenko going into midfield and all that stuff. That was new. So there, that's kind of why I think there'll be something new this season, because Arteta is just so, like, he is one of the best tactically minded coaches in the world, or in Europe right now, like probably second to Pep. And Pep does wild things with his centre backs. Like, what if Arteta starts doing some of that stuff and starts playing William Saliba in midfield or something like that? Like, I don't think that's going to happen, but who knows, right? I think we're so confident, so lucky to have a manager that's tactically very ahead of what most of the league are doing. Like Man United have only just discovered how important it is to have goalkeepers that can play out from the back this summer. Like, we were doing that 3 years ago when we were like, 3 years ago, we were like, oh, we got to get rid of Leno because he can't play out from the back and he's not that good. We've got Ramsdale in. So yeah, like, who knows what, like, I think just such is the confidence and such is the belief in this manager, the team, the scouting, that, yeah, like, Havertz doesn't look like a player that I would personally pay 60 million for, but I'm just like, yeah, go for it, man. I trust you. If you think this guy is going to be good, just see how it works. Yeah,
agree, mate. I mean, it just and the last player I wanted to talk about is Jurriën Timber. So again, seems like that deal is done. I think there were some pictures that went around a couple of days ago about him having a farewell party and stuff like that in Holland. And seems like any day now will be announced. Really interesting thing on this one is the narrative on Arsenal social media, so on the Arsenal Twitter sphere, is that this is a guy who's coming in to play as an inverted right back as an alternative to Ben White. That's the thing that's been spoken about a lot. And I admit, I've not watched the guy. So I read all of this stuff and I'm like, okay, perhaps that's how it is. But I just did some like research prior to this pod. Timber didn't play 1 minute at right back last season for Ajax. He played every single minute at centre back. And the season before that, he played basically about 95% of his minutes at centre back, like a little bit at right back. So, I didn't go past before that. So you're basically saying, like, this guy is a centre back who occasionally played right back a couple of seasons ago or the season before last. But this assumption's being made that he is an alternative to Ben White. Where do you guys sort of stand on this? Is that what your assumption was, or and I'll go to you, Miser. Did you assume that he was going to be effectively the new Rob Holding, i.e., like kind of, well, probably more than just backup for Saliba, as in just the alternative centre back to Saliba?
Yeah, I think my assumption was he was coming in as a. It's really interesting you say that because of what you just said about where he's played previously, because I didn't know that, to be fair. So yeah, my assumption was kind of what everyone's been saying. He's coming in as potentially competition for right back for Ben White, sorry, at right back, or possibly to take Ben White's place. I mean, there's so many possibilities here, isn't there? Because and this is what I love now about the squad that we're building, because you could say that Ben White was fantastic last season in that position, but I don't necessarily think, if you're looking at attacking fullbacks, he's one of the best, if you know what I mean. Like, he's a solid right back, or he was a solid right back last season, but I think if you can get a bit more from that position, especially when it's Saka who you're playing behind, and he overlaps quite well and everything. And I'm sure he got his fair share of assists, but I think there's definitely an improvement there, and maybe that's why they've looked at a player like Timber, because he does like to get forward. He's a ball carrying defender, or maybe they're looking at, well, Ben White was brilliant alongside Ben White was brilliant as a centre back 2 seasons ago. Maybe we kind of put him back into that pool of centre backs and let them kind of fight it out, as it were, between Saliba, Gabriel, Ben White, and I guess Kiwior. And that's why, like, we don't really know, to be honest, mate. Like, I presumed he was coming in as right back competition, but maybe not, based on what you've just said. But I think this is what I was just coming back to what I was saying. Like, this is what I love. We've got all of these players. You look across the defense, you look across the midfield, you look across the attackers. There's players where it's not so much you don't know what their best position is, but they're comfortable playing in multiple positions. And I'm going to be saying this all through the season on this podcast. I'm going to be saying it loads of times. I've said it loads of times before. I think we all have. You've got to look at the City model, and you've just got to look at, they don't necessarily. They do, obviously, like Haaland's a striker, Kevin De Bruyne is a number 10, whatever. But, in some of the other positions, their players can play in they can play in different positions. Yeah. They can fill in, they can alternate, they can change it halfway through a game, and they have those options. So I think that's what I'm looking at. And I also think this is the season, like, Arteta's had quite a bit of criticism for not really rotating that well, not really changing. Yeah, not really rotating that well. That's pretty much it. I think he sticks to I don't know, like, let's say 9 core players. I made that number up. Like, he has a. Like, it's very easy to predict who he's going to play every game, and maybe that's just because circumstances previously, have meant that he has to play the same team because that's they're the best players. But now I think it's not as clear who the best players are. And I think we have much more of a kind of level squad where the level has gone up a lot. So I'm looking at this season as potentially being the season where we don't play the same starting 11 every game, and we do rotate, and we're going to have to do that with Champions League. So yeah, maybe it's just not as rigid as, is it Ben White or is it Timber, or is Timber a right back or is it a centre back? But maybe it's more a case of, well, he can play both positions, and we can play both of those players as and when we need to. And I think that's what I'm hoping for, really, because then that indicates that we have a squad of top players.
Yeah, well said, mate. I think the other thing that I'll compare to City, and I wonder whether Arteta is going in that direction, is one of the really interesting takeaways I found with what Pep Guardiola said after they won the Champions League. I can't remember who asked the question, but it was a question around what's changed this season. And he talked about defensively, and he just said that he goes, defensively, we have better one-on-one defenders now. And I think he said some other stuff, which then when you analyze it, you look at it, and he's basically at times going into games where he's got 4 centre-backs, like four people who are predominantly centre-backs. If we look at what Arteta's doing, it's not, in some ways, not that similar, right? Because he's taken Ben White, who was, a centre-back, and he's deployed him as a right-back. Kiwior, who is kind of playing at centre-back and allegedly plays more centre-back, defensive midfield or whatever. He's been playing him at left-back more recently. Timber, it could very well be that Timber, the intention absolutely is to play him as a right-back, even though, he's been playing predominantly as centre-back, because that might just be Arteta having a very similar mentality to Pep, to think that he's got these really sort of talented cogs, but when it comes to how he uses some of these kind of wide defenders, he knows he's going to get in situations where he's going to have to kind of rely on them to come into very central areas and sort of defend properly and be very kind of stoic and actually take on, and when they're in wide areas, really provide that kind of challenge to wingers. So I wonder whether actually they're so similar in their principles, they're so similar in how they see football and what's required to win in the Premier League and the Champions League. I wonder if it's just a similar evolution to that. But I completely echo everything that you said. I really hope that this is the season where we go into games and we're actually not sure what the lineup's going to be, and that's not in a bad way. Like, we are genuinely kind of, it could be a variety of options, and all those options would be interesting options. I suppose a final question to you, Aaron, is these are the three signings that it seems like are kind of, Havertz, Timber, and Rice are the ones that are effectively the done ones. It sounds like all reports seem to suggest we're going to be focusing on outgoings. There's been some link with a Brazilian central midfielder today that is kind of sprouting about a 23-year-old from Gremio. I can't even remember his name. But there was also some links with Lavia a little while ago. Do you see any more incoming business from Arsenal?
I think I'm secretly hoping for one more. I think a lot of it will depend, though, on who goes and where, right? I think if Thomas Partey goes, that leaves a bit of a hole that we need to fill. But if he stays, then actually, like, what if Balogun or Nketiah go, then maybe that opens up there. Like, maybe there's a possibility that someone goes on loan in one of those attacking positions. Like, again, I can't see Vieira going anywhere, but then we've got Smith Rowe who's going to knock about and who looked pretty decent in the Euros for the under-21s a few weeks ago. So I don't know. I think there's a risk that, like, I think there's a few players. Tierney, unfortunately, seems like one. Who else was there? Like, I think Elneny will still be around, but like we discussed on our transfer episode, I think it depends. Like, if Balogun stays and Eddie Nketiah stays and Reece Nelson is staying, Smith Rowe stays, Vieira stays, like, how do you sign someone and give them minutes? I don't understand how you make that work, unless there's a big injury, which would be a real shame if that did happen. No, so I'm really intrigued. Like, I know we've talked about the City model, but I still think with a lot of, especially new signings, you need to give them minutes so they bed in, right? And the beauty of last season was actually, we did play 8-9 players pretty much every game, but those 8-9 players, because they played every game, became really good and became a team that knew each other really well. Now, how are we going to get that if we are rotating? That's going to be hard. But there are more first team type games, because you're going to have the Champions League, you're going to have the Premier League, and actually I can see a situation to say, like, no, we don't have like a Premier League or Champions League team, but what we do have is, okay, we've got a Champions League game, a big Champions League game midweek, but we might have, I don't know, Palace at home or something like that, and actually we rotate for Palace at home before the Champions League, and actually you might see the likes of Vieira. Like, if we're there, I can't remember whether there was a game. I can't remember what it was. I think we talked about. There was a period where last season where I think, Miles, you were saying like Saka should be rested. I think it was against Leeds at home, and then we're playing Forest at home or something like that. And Arteta basically just played the first 11 back to back, and he didn't change it. And those are the types of games where we need to rotate. We can't be playing Saka, Jesus, Saliba, all those guys 3 times a week, 20 weeks in a row. It's just not going to work. So yeah. Do I think anyone else will come in? I hope so, because new signings are fun. But I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I think it would very much depend on if the money comes in for someone else as well, because there is a financial side of things as well as the squad depth side of things.
But I can also imagine towards the back end of the window, there's that classic period of there suddenly become some deals to be done that you didn't know about at the beginning. And I wonder if we're a bit agile in that respect. I mean, one that's interesting that just sort of popped up today was, Aston Villa being linked with that Moussa Diaby from Leverkusen. I found that really interesting because I remember, he was one of the names that was being touted as this, as a potential incoming right winger for Arsenal to be the kind of Saka alternative. And people at the time were saying, this is an £80 million player. So can you really, maybe Arsenal won't spend that much for sort of a rotational kind of right winger. And Villa seem to have bid 30 million for him. And apparently he's pushing for a move to Villa. So if they bid 30 million for him, I can't imagine that the valuation is 80 million. I can imagine maybe, that they'll settle for, I don't know, 40 or whatever. I don't know. I'm intrigued to see if he's someone that Arsenal actually were interested in. And I wonder if they could move for a player like that if they think they're going to get a good price. Or maybe, Reece Nelson is someone that they think that, no, this season can take some minutes at right wing. I mean, just to finish, is there anything you want to add to what Aaron said in terms of kind of hopeful incomings?
I feel quite similar, to be honest. If there's outgoings, then absolutely, we can't afford to have gaps in the squad. I think the players that are most likely to leave, when you look at Tierney, Balogun, the players that we're probably going to fetch quite a decent fee for if they were to go. But equally, you'd want to keep those players in and around the squad just in case, right? They're good, both good players, and especially Balogun. We don't really know what to expect from him, and I think everyone's really keen to see what he might do in an Arsenal shirt. Any other incomings? We are linked. We are still being linked with a few players. Like you say, there's this question mark about the right side, and if Saka doesn't play, then who plays? And it seems like Reece Nelson might be that player, but then he keeps playing him on the left. So, that's a bit weird. And it'll be very interesting to see what he does in this preseason when Saka doesn't play. I don't know who played in Saka's position when he came off today. I have no idea, actually. And who came on and played on that right-hand side. That's one. We were being linked with was it a right back from Germany recently? I can't remember his name now. And I think there were quite strong links. Could be making that up. Name's going to come to me later. So it sounds like we're still kind of in the market. I can't see any massive money signings, but maybe there might be a squad player that comes in. But yeah, I think it's going to be a bit more dependent on outgoings, to be honest. If we lose Partey, then everything we talked about before about having Rice, Partey, Jorginho as your midfield, that kind of goes out the window. And then we're probably very, very short in that area. So then I would expect that we'd have to do something, or we're looking at one of the youngsters potentially being ready. Yeah. But I think the thing is, mate, we've just been spoiled, haven't we? Because we've done massive business very, very, very early on. All of our rivals are looking at us being bloody hell, Arsenal mean business this season. So, it's this one, it's just that age-old thing, right? We get excited about transfers, but we get more excited when they come towards the end of the window. But I think what we've done is really, really smart, and we've got our business done early, and hopefully Rice and Timber arrive ready for this next stage of pre-season. And I think it's perception, isn't it? Because we've done the business early, it's oh, are we bringing anyone else in? But really, the three players that we're bringing in are huge signings. So arguably all three come straight into the first team based on the money that we're spending. So yeah, maybe very hard to predict, but I'm pretty happy with how the squad's looking at the moment.
Agree. Me too. All right, guys. Well, look, the next time we will record will probably be at some point next week. We may have played another preseason game in America by that time. So listen, and hopefully we'll have Rice and Timber officially announced in our squad. So listen, everyone, thank you for listening. Thank you, Russ, for your comments. Appreciate it. Mize, Aaron, and as always, a pleasure. And we will talk to you all later. Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.